Welcome back to the workshop. Today we're going to be continuing the work on my first Mastersmith knife build. Previously, we forged out all the steel for it, a historically inspired twisted serpentine multi-bar pattern, and then we forged out the 10-inch blade and integral guard. We left room. We're going to be doing some piercings in this piece. Super exciting design. I've wanted to do this for a very long time, and we're picking up where we left off right after we finished the forging.
Okay, so as you guys saw, I just gave the blade a little bit of a soak in some muriatic acid, and what I wanted that to do was basically strip all the forge scale off. You can see the tip of the knife didn't quite make it in. That's what it looked like before. All that's hard iron oxide hanging onto the outside, and that just makes the grinding process a little bit easier. But the real reason why I wanted to strip that off was because of the guard. Now, you guys remember from the last episode, I had a little bit of a delam issue on the edge of the guard, and I wanted to make sure that it didn't go in too deep, see how it was looking, and this is the easiest way to get all of this stuff out of there. And so we knew about the delam on this side of the guard. We did not know about the delam on the far side of the guard. So that creates some problems because it's deep enough and it's in kind of a crucial spot. So I'm gonna have to fix it one way or another. There's a couple different ways that I could go about attacking this. I could try and grind it out, which is probably the most problematic way to do it, because if I mess that up, not a whole lot that I can do. I can try and heat it up with a little bit of flux and my little torch and try and forge weld it back together in just that very small area. And I think that's what I want to try first.
The steps here. First thing I'm going to do is preheat the guard just a little bit. I want to get it warm enough that this Iron Mountain flux will stick to it. This stuff has bits of cast iron in it, which helps, from what I understand, lower the eutectic barrier or something like that, so that forge welding can happen at a lower temperature and a lot easier. So we're gonna get this preheated, we're gonna get it fluxed, then we're gonna bring it up to a nice welding heat. I'm gonna hang it off backwards right here so that I can get this little ball peen hammer in to close up this side. After that's done, we'll move on to getting this one done. Same process, except it'll already be hot, so the flux will already be sticking to it. But that's the order of operations. We should be able to get it stuck back together. I'd say maybe 50-50. It's not super confident. All right, getting up to a nice temperature now. Oh. Okay, didn't fully work. And before anyone says anything, I'm not trying to be an Alex Steele lookalike. I just bought these safety glasses to not have to wear those super boring ones, and they ended up looking a lot more like normal glasses than I thought they were going to. We got it forge welded in a little bit more. Fortunately, we have some room there. We actually need to trim about 1/4 inch off the end of the guard. Now, I got to be careful here because I don't want to thin it out too much. Our guard is already thin. We have about 50 or 60 thousandths of an inch of material that we're able to remove before it's like a problem. I like a thin guard. I think it looks nice. I think with hardened steel, it's plenty fine to have a guard that thin. Hopefully the Mastersmith judges feel the same way. Part of the other thing that this flux does is it keeps oxygen from being able to touch the material. And so this material was perfectly clean when it came out of the muriatic acid, which means that it's a great surface to weld back together. But if it does oxidize, then it can not want to weld at all. Let's get another heat on it and see if one area wants to heat up faster than the other area. And that will tell us what we're looking at. We might have got it, guys. Closed up a bit. It's not all the way closed. Looks okay. It's fine. Let's go clamp this guy in the big bench vise, the Reed 108, and we'll use some scrolling tongs to fix it. The way that I forged it, it's a little bit thicker on this side than it is on this side, and it was before. And then with the hammering that I did on this side, it's even thinner. And so what I did is kind of in the base here where that crack was I tilted it a little bit farther this way because I want to be able to remove material off the top of the guard there and the bottom of the guard over here because that doesn't matter. This does matter. So I want to have to remove as little material as possible, but I have more room to do it if it's bent that way, I think. I'm not totally sure about that. I might have just made that up, but I'm going to stick with it. Getting very much into dangerous territory with how thin this is. That's how thick it should be. That's how thin it is in the endangered area. I think that did it. I got that a lot hotter than I had before, and that Iron Mountain flux really started to bubble in a way that it hadn't been. Yeah! Thank you, Jesus. All right, so now that we've got it hopefully sorted out, we're gonna go ahead and fire up the even heat kiln, bring it up to 1550 degrees. We're gonna do a couple of normalizing cycles, 3 to be exact. Then we're gonna bring it down to 360 degrees and run this guy through a DET anneal. That will leave this super soft, which is good because we have a lot of machining and grinding work to do on this. And so it being as soft and as malleable as possible is going to be cash money. Well, if you guys remember back to last episode when we were making the Damascus and doing the forging for this piece, we didn't have a ton of time to actually do the stress relieving and the billet before we chopped it up. But we do have time to do that today before we do the machining on this piece. And I used that in the last episode to segue into the fact that BetterHelp was that video's sponsor. And that's really funny because you're never going to guess who today's video sponsor is. If you guys couldn't figure out that today's sponsor is BetterHelp from that, well, you probably need therapy anyway. And there's no easier way to do that than by supporting BetterHelp. BetterHelp makes getting therapy incredibly easy. You're able to connect to someone online while still being face-to-face by a video call. But if that's too much for you, they can also do phone calls or texts, and they make it incredibly easy and simple to find someone that understands your worldview. If you're trying to work through a situation with someone that doesn't know what the foundations of your life are built upon, that's just simply not going to work. Now, just like any relationship, finding the right person is super important. And so if you do find someone and you just don't get along for whatever reason, they'd make it incredibly easy to find someone that you do enjoy working with. Now, whether you're a craftsman that just messed up a big project, or whether you're dealing with seasonal depression, or maybe it's personal conflicts within your family, or whatever it is, having someone to talk to, especially a professional that knows how to work through these things, is incredibly important. So if you want to take that first step towards therapy, and especially if you want to find someone that understands your worldview and your faith, you can go to betterhelp.com/Will Stelter for 10% off your first month, and that link is going to be in the description down below. Thank you, BetterHelp. With that, let's keep on stress relieving this knife. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and go in with a hand file and kind of clean up this area just a little bit. Make sure that that forge weld on the top still looks good. I have a little bit of room to work with this guard. I want to taper it from about 100 thousandths of an inch right here down to about 60 thou out at the end. That's pretty thin, but it's going to be hardened steel, so it's kind of okay. Actually, real quick, I just want to clean off the sides, this forge scale over here. Those give me a little bit better sense of, I'll be able to draw my lines a little bit easier on there to shoot for my layout stuff. All right, so what I'm working on right now is trying to get the guard flat and square. The reason why I want to do that now is I want to make sure that I can get it flat and square in the orientation in relation to the blade that I want. So it doesn't need to be absolutely perfect now, but I want it to be pretty dang close. What I'm dealing with and struggling with is that getting into these corners is kind of a pain. It doesn't matter what kind of file you're using that I have right now, it's hard to get in there. If I were to use this file right now, I could get in there and I could cut into this tiny little corner, but it's also going to be cutting on the face. So I'm going to turn this into what is called a safe edge file, and I have safe edge files. That means that there's no teeth on one of the edges, but I don't have a bastard file, which is what this is called with these lines going like that, where one whole face of it is safe edge. It means that I'll be able to put it on the face of the guard and cut with the edge of it and use the flat edge like a guide where it'll be protecting it. And so I'll be able to get in there and file it down to where I want it, but I won't be filing on the face of the guard. So I'm going to just go slap this on the surface grinder and get it flattened down. So I also addressed the corners of the file. This is working good, by the way. And the reason why I addressed the top corner is because the teeth of a file are cut in, and so they have a flat piece of bar stock, and then they don't do it by hand anymore, but a machine makes these little chisel marks, and that's what makes the teeth of a file. When you do that on the face and on the edge, it makes just a little bit wider burr along that very corner. And so if I were to take this and have not done that and get to filing in my shoulders, eventually when I hit the actual ricasso of the knife, it would cut a line in the top of it if I was actually cutting perfectly square. And I didn't want to do that, and so I just, with 1,000 grit on the disc, addressed it and took care of it. So now I can get right up to that ricasso without cutting a line at the top of the file. All right, back into the grinding room. All right, I'm now to the part of this build where I'm using a hand file and I'm trying to stay as steady as possible. I don't want to rock the file up and down or side to side. And I'm using safe edge files to cut and crisp up these corners and get everything tight looking and square. You see, this is supposed to look like this piece is separate from this piece. And so if it has a flowing transition, it doesn't look like that. If things aren't square, that just doesn't look good. I think the hardest part is getting inside this little area right here. Just because the plunge line of the blade comes straight out there, you just have less room to work. Okay, so now that the guard is pretty much squared up, not entirely, but really close, I want to go ahead and move on to doing my guard layout and my rough final grinding for the profile of the guard below the ricasso. Now, part of the reason that I want to do that is I want to make sure before I get too far into this that this guard is going to be okay. I put a little bit of red Dicom on there, and then I figured out a way that I could hold the blade onto a 1, 2, 3 block, and that way I can use the work rest on my grinder to keep things completely, totally, exactly square while I'm doing my grinding. That's super important. So it'll be square to the ricasso of the knife. I don't feel totally comfortable trying to freehand this in. I want to have that safety of the work rest, knowing that it's going to be completely square. So that's what we're going to do. Well, we've got that squared up now. The next thing that we need to square up before we do the profiling of kind of the like little pierced hole area in the tang and then piercing our hole in the blade is we need to get this square. And so right now this guy is canted off. It is about 20 thousandths of an inch higher right here than it is right here, just to prove that this is indeed flat. We'll flip it around. I did not change the height of this, but you can see that it doesn't go over the top, but it does up here. So we're about 1,000th or 2 low right here, and then looks to me to be about 10, 15 thou maybe. Not too bad. Just enough that you can pick it up with the naked eye. We're a touch high still. I think I'm gonna go get the disc sander set up because that will allow me to get the whole thing dead flat as opposed to working smaller areas. It's just a lot more precise of a tool. So we got a 220 grit disc on there right now. That'll be perfect. Okay, so I just noticed something as I was getting ready to go into the grinding room, and that is that there was a little bit of a gap at the front of the ricasso here. So this screw is holding it down, pinching it at the spine, and I think what it was doing was just rocking it back a tiny, tiny bit. So I measured, and this side, where it would be at the lower point, was 4 thousandths of an inch thicker than it is right here. First I checked to make sure that it wasn't the copper washer that gave us that play. It does sit flat when I just pinch it, and so I know that it should be sitting flat if I had a good clamp on it. So what I'm going to do is get it close and then actually throw a clamp on the top side of it. So, and then when we tighten it down, you see it just makes a tiny, tiny little gap there. So what we're going to do is loosen it and then throw a can't twist clamp on the blade like so. And then when we tighten it, we get no gap. Now that it's actually square, we're taking off material right there, and it'll very quickly come up the other way. So right now, we're good right there, but then you go over here, and we're like way high. How high are we? Yeah, about 20 thou high there. I made that way more confusing for myself than I needed to. Basically, all I had to do was find the lowest point, set my height gauge to it, and then scribe everywhere else. That's all it took. Alrighty, well, I think we done it. There's a little bit of a low spot right here, but that's an area that I'm going to be flowing the guard into kind of the face of the handle anyway, and it's only low by, it's actually not low. The disc sander just couldn't get there. So it is flat across the face of it. We're within about a thousandth and a half between kind of there to there. So I'm really happy with that. Now means that we're ready to do our layout and pierce our holes in the blade and in the tang area. I want to do that before I can do the handle to guard transition, before I grind that in, because I want to know exactly where it's going to be at. I'm going to machine it to within, a couple thousandths of where it should be, but I am going to have to hand finish it out. So now we're going to re-dicum it up and then kind of scribe out where we want everything to be. I know how I'm going to be able to cut this in. I'll be able to fixture this basically exactly how it is right now. So basically right now, the setup that we've got, I'm able to have the 1, 2, 3 block on parallels, which is a good thing. I've got a little bit of micarta underneath it, which means that I can drill through without it being a problem. But this end out here is going to be a problem. So I've got this little machinist screw jack. This is a shop-made thing that I picked up. I got this from Steve Schwarzer, actually. Found it in an old machinist toolbox when we were cleaning out his shop. I'm going to use this to bolster up this end to get rid of vibration. Well, this guy just scooched, oh, that's so frustrating, and busted the end mill and took a chunk out of the knife. Wow, that sucks. Well, got the piercing the blade mostly punched out. Super duper bummer about that end mill catching. I should have known from the get-go that I would need to hold it in 2 different places. The mill broke off, it's 30 thou down. Not a whole lot, less than a millimeter. I think it'll come out and be pretty dang okay. I'm not super duper worried about it. The next step is going to be punching our hole in the back of the knife, but we're going to leave that until the next episode because we have other things to do right now. So thank you guys so much for following along. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you enjoyed this series, please like and subscribe, and stay tuned as I build the rest of my Master Bladesmith test knives. Thank you very much. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring today's episode, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.